been searching for the best way to generate passive income in your life and heard that real estate is a great way to do it. But you're tired of all the so-called gurus who are all talk and no substance. Get ready to celebrate because Kevin Buck has spent 14 years successfully making it happen. This is the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Now, here's Kevin Buck.
Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Our mission is to help you build and maintain massive amounts of cash flow through income-producing real estate investments. Now, our guest for this week's show is a real estate and senior living expert, Gene Guarino. Now, Gene is a certified financial planner in the U.S. and Australia, as well as a full-time real estate investor with more than 30 years of experience in just about every area of real estate, including both residential and commercial, with his primary focus today being in the senior living space, or I guess more specifically known as residential assisted living homes, which it's very different. Its business model is very different than that of your typical large multi-story senior care facility that most folks are familiar with. And so in today's show, we're going to discuss how this unique combination of residential and commercial, along with paired with the baby boomer generation is pretty much unstoppable. It's an unstoppable wave of opportunity that you guys can capitalize on today. And so in addition to just that general high level conversation, we're also going to talk about COVID, right? I mean, it's this interview, just to give you guys some context here, this interview is being recorded on February 9th. And so more than likely, you're going to be hearing it a few months thereafter that. But more than likely, COVID will still be on the minds of most folks. It will still be talked about in the news, what have you. And so we're going to talk about the effects of COVID and, as it's applicable to the senior living space. And so, guys, with that, I'd like to welcome back Mr. Gene Guarino. Gene, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great, Kevin. Thanks for inviting me back. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we were talking about it before we started recording here, and I can't remember. You definitely been on once, possibly twice, so this could be your second or third appearance in the show. But either way, I'm excited to have you back. I know it's been a couple of years since we last had you on, and so lots can change over a few year span of time. Again, we went through a very unique year this past year, and so we're really excited to get caught up with you. But Gene, I think where I'd like to start it off is for those folks that aren't familiar with you, that don't know who you are, your background, what it is you do, maybe take a few minutes to tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Thank you. So I do what's called residential assisted living. We take single family homes and convert them into the assisted living home for the elderly. I started in real estate just like a lot of people do, with fix and flip, buy and hold, small unit apartments, etc. And I got into this 7.5 years ago because my own mother needed help. She didn't need a nursing home, couldn't stay home alone. So I vowed to create a solution, and that's exactly what we did. So right now, there's almost 30,000 of these units across the country in a residential setting. And even though I say 30,000 sounds like a lot, between that and the big facilities, the Brookdales, the Sunrise, Atria, there's about 1,100,000 beds in assisted living. But there's actually 1.4 million people turning 85 years of age every single year, 1.4 million every year for the next 20 years. So there's a huge opportunity in senior housing, and I do it with residential assisted living and shared housing, and happy to talk about that.
Okay, fantastic. Appreciate that. And, just to give a little bit more context there, you had mentioned that you jumped into this space about 7.5 years ago, or somewhat you were forced into the space due to a situation with your mother. And what was it exactly that prompted you to find alternative options for her?
Yeah, there was, I remember getting a phone call, and that's really where it began. It was my sister Ann. She said Mom had fallen out of bed. My heart stopped just like anybody. And when I got there, it was 2 days later. I lived thousands of miles away. I realized everything had changed. And I'm fortunate. I've got 6 brothers and sisters, so 7 kids altogether, that one of my sisters could literally move in and help watch Mom. Then as Mom needed more help, she moved in with my other sister. And before you knew it, she needed more help. So the choices are pretty limited. Hire somebody to come in and take care of Mom, or bring Mom and put her into a home. So when we went out to look at that alternative, bring Mom, put her into a home, we just found really big institutional, smells like neglect as soon as you walk through the front door. Yeah. And we said, this is not what we wanted for Mom. We said we wouldn't, we won't, we're going to take care of her, but I needed to find a better solution. So, a lot of times that's where things come from. There's a need, the necessity drives the solution, and that's exactly what happened.
Got it. Got it. Let's talk about the stats you shared quickly about the baby boomers. How many are turning? Was it 80 or 85? What was the
85.
85? Yeah. What was it? 4 million?
1.4 million every year for the next 20 years.
So what does that break it down as to how much new supply is really needed on an annual basis to meet that need? Obviously, because some of those folks will be ultimately dying off as well as new ones come online. So how short are we on current supply, and how much do we need in any given year to really meet that demand?
It's a great question, and I'm glad you're jumping right in. There's about 1.1 million beds overall in the U.S. Some areas have more, some have less. But right now, this past year, 2020, they added about 50,000 beds. Now, that sounds like a lot, but if you have 1.4 million people turning 85, not all of them will need senior housing, but hundreds of thousands of them will. So in a lot of the better places, there's no room in the end. There's a waiting list to get in. And in the bad places, there's still a waiting list, no room to get in. So there's a huge opportunity all over the country, but it's very, very local. And that's what we teach a lot of, is where to do it, how to do it, all of those different details.
Okay. And of those 1.4 that are turning 85 each and every year, just what does the data suggest? How many of those truly, you said a couple 100,000, but like what has it been over the last couple of years? How many of those really are seeking some type of option, such as the residential care facilities that you do, or regular senior living, or some type of senior care? I mean, what's the percentage?
Actually, here's how the numbers work in America with 300, because I got to go big picture and then it's always local. But in America, there's 328 million people. 16.9% of them are 65 and above, and 7% of that group themselves will need help of some kind. So we call it activities of daily living. But if we're taking 328, 17%, we'll call it 16.9, is about 55 million people. And if 7% of that, that's about 3.5 million people. And if there's only 1.1 million beds, well, you can do the math from there. It's projected that they need at least 2.3 million beds by 2019. So that's 8-9 years from now. There's 1.1.
Even if 2029, correct? Is that
2029?
Yeah, guy, You said 2019. Just want to make sure that we're not going to reverse here.
Time is going fast. You're right.
That's anti-aging for you right there.
Yeah, I got that for you. I wish. The reality is, even if they added 50,000 more beds every year for the next 9 years, that's 450,000. There's 1.3 million beds that are needed. It's a big, huge crisis or opportunity as I look at it.
Okay. So let's talk about this past summer. I guess you could say last spring really is when COVID became a major issue. So spring of 2020, really, I think March was when we went into a national lockdown. And then it became more market specific or state specific. I looked back at some stats, back in the middle of 2020. So really when the concern of it was at its highest level, and I think midsummer occupancy per the senior living sector. And I don't know what the reference point was. I just found some article online, and so I'm sure there's varying data out there. But it looked like occupancy had dropped across the sector, but it wasn't significant. I think it was by a percent or two. What today? Fast forward to today, again in February 2021. Not that COVID has gone away. We understand it a little more. Vaccinations are being rolled out across the country with an emphasis on the aging population, 65 plus. And so where are resident move-ins in comparison to move-outs at the present time? And are they back to pre-COVID levels or coming close?
Sure. Let me give you the big picture, because I think a lot of people have heard news and they say, oh, seniors, nursing homes, death, bad. Here's the reality of it. The bigger facilities, the Brookdale, Sunrise, Adria's, 200-300 beds, they kind of shut their doors and they left the people inside. They basically said, whoever's here, you can stay. But a lot of them said no new residents can come in. So when you do that, no new people coming in, your occupancy is going to drop. The really sad thing, though, Kevin, is that those people, those residents in that big box facility were pretty much isolated in their own room. They didn't know what to do to keep them safe. So they said, you can't come visit your mom or dad or grandma or grandpa. We've got them. They're in their room. We feed them food 3 times a day and they're fine. That isolation has been horrible for them. Mm-hmm. So a lot of those seniors in those big box facilities have ended up moving into the residential assisted living model because we have more flexibility. It's a safer environment. You only have 10 or 15 people in that home versus 200-300 people in the big community. Only a few people coming through the front door with potential problems versus dozens or more coming through the big facility. So in the homes, occupancy has remained the same, been very strong, new people moving in. In the big box facility where they closed the doors, said no new coming in, it was only a matter of attrition where beds were emptying for various reasons, old age, etc. So now they're starting to open up, but people have now figured it out. Smaller is better. They're reluctant to go into that big community where they cannot socially distance, etc. Where in a home environment, you're a lot safer. And I've been saying that, every time I've been on your show, I've said that smaller is safer. Now the big boxes are figuring it out. They're writing articles. We were just we launched a franchise last year. That franchise is one of 5 businesses to watch in 2021, according to Senior Housing News. And that's pretty darn impressive, that franchise alone, because the entire industry encompasses tens of billions of dollars, millions of people involved, and our company is one of the top 5 to watch.
That's exciting. Congratulations. And so that begs the question. So the larger institutional players that have those multi-story, the Brookdales of the world, the big facilities, 300 bed facilities, are they? I know that they weren't really dabbling in that in the residential model space. Are they heading that direction now, or are they adding that to their business model?
And every time I used to go to the large conventions, the large big box conventions, in the front of the room, they're always saying the same thing. How do we become more home-like? Now they're being forced to. So they're trying to figure it out. How do we take 200 people, segregate them into 10 or 15 people in an area so they're isolated from the rest? Well, it sounds like a home to me. So now the bigger units and developments are going to end up being, my prediction is that it's going to end up being a cul-de-sac model. Think a home and then build another home and another home designed for senior housing in this setting. So it's exactly what we've been doing. And we have students who are doing exactly that across the country. So the big box, it's hard to turn around a steamship, to that cruise ship, turn it around. They'll get there eventually. We're already there. And we have some people scaling up quickly because once you have 100 of those homes, the big guys can write checks for hundreds of millions of dollars. That's faster for them to get in the game. So that's where it's all headed.
Has anyone attempted to do a subdivision type arrangement? I know you say cul-de-sac, and that's kind of where my mind goes to, a subdivision, something that's got, 10, 15, maybe even more than that, plus buildings or individual homes, and literally have an entire neighborhood for senior care. Is that a model yet?
It is a model. It does exist. And we have students who are doing exactly that right now.
Very interesting.
Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here with Sunrise Capital Investors. As you are hopefully already well aware if you've been a listener for any period of time, my goal has always been to provide you with as much value as I possibly can through my 2 podcasts, Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow and the Mobile Home Park Investing Podcast. As our audience continues to grow, literally, we've been downloaded millions of times by folks in over 125 countries. I've had thousands of people reach out looking to get involved in our niche, and that's the phenomenal niche of mobile home park investing. Now, for those that don't know, I've been a full-time real estate investor for more than 20 years now, and I've personally invested in and have owned apartment complexes, various commercial properties, hundreds of single-family rentals, and I've interviewed some of the most successful investors in just about every other asset class, and I've arrived at this one very simple conclusion. Mobile home parks are hands down the best investment I've found to date. Why? They provide investors with the best risk-adjusted returns out of any other real estate sector that I've seen. Investing in real estate can get complicated, and I really want to simplify this process for you. If you're someone who wants to diversify away from the uncertainty of Wall Street and allocate a percentage of your real estate portfolio to mobile home parks, but maybe don't have the time nor the inclination to personally locate good deals yourself, then our team will do it for you. At Sunrise Capital Investors, our team specializes in the acquisitions and management of undervalued and highly profitable mobile home parks. And we are now providing accredited investors with an opportunity to participate directly alongside our team in Growth and Income Fund 3. When you invest in our fund, you get immediate diversification into multiple deals we acquired off-market that are already performing and have built-in sweat equity. And let me say this, I believe that we are hands down the best in our space at sourcing highly profitable off-market deals. That's really what makes us unique in this niche and as investment managers. As stewards of your capital, we truly are aligned with our investors. We've structured our investment fund so that we as a company are incentivized in the same way the investor is, which is through the performance of the investment itself. In addition, we want to make sure that we not only make money for our investors, but that they understand how it's being made. That's why we provide our accredited partners with a private monthly podcast that walks them through the detailed updates on how their investment is performing. And we're very transparent, providing you with the good, the bad, and the ugly at times. And so if you'd like to learn more about the partnership opportunities with our team here at Sunrise, please visit us at investwithsunrise.com and request access to the investor presentation. It's absolutely free, and you'll get instant access to review the off-market deals that we've already purchased that you can co-own with our team. Also, feel free to call us at 833-CASH-FLOW without the O. Again, that's 833-227-4359, and our investor relations team will help you schedule an appointment to speak with one of our managing principals. If you have questions, go ahead and schedule the call. Let's jump on the phone. And with that, guys, I'd like to leave with one last thought. From the time that I wake up in the morning till the time that I lay my head down the rest of the evening, my number one priority with everything I do, whether it be recording this podcast, working for our investors, helping each of you reach your investment goals, to providing a great experience to each of our residents who reside in our communities, is to add huge amounts of value to everyone that I come in contact with. Now, with that being said, I look forward to the opportunity of bringing value to you through Sunrise and through this podcast. Thank you for your time. Now, let's go ahead and get back to the show.
What are some of the changes that you've had to make or that you intend to make, to the actual structure itself or design elements of the building that will ultimately help curb any fears with with COVID? Are there any, HVAC system changes, layout changes, anything that's been, a direct result of COVID and the fear of COVID?
Yeah, I would say two things. One is going to be air purification systems. A lot of my personal homes have always had that, a whole house air filtration system that within 10 minutes takes out anything that's there. So it cuts down on not just dust and dirt and smells, but also viruses. So air filtration systems for the house. And then the second one is just potentially having a separate room somewhere that people could have visits from. So instead of the kids coming through the house to visit grandma can go in a back room or patio or porch, indoor or outdoor. The family can come and visit them there. So they get the time together where it's isolated from the other residents in the home.
Okay, very interesting. So I want to dive in a little bit, just to give folks that are listening a little bit more of an idea of what we're talking about as it relates to these residential homes, senior homes. Give us an example, maybe an example of not a new build, but I know that another part of this business model is a conversion model that you widely teach. And so, again, what are we looking for? What type of neighborhood? What size of a home would you say would be the minimum size that we would consider, and any other considerations with the home itself as we go through the conversion process?
Great question. And I'm glad you asked it the way you did, because it's not really the house. We can scrape away the house and rebuild it or fix it or change it. It's the location. And the location, it's really all about demographics. So it's not oceanfront, mountaintop, or beachside. It's going to be, where are the kids who are 50, 60, who are going to choose the home for mom, write the check and pay for that care? Where do they live? So those communities themselves, that's the most important thing. The house itself, the states around the country have their own rules, but basically it'll boil down to, if you had a 2,000 square foot house, you could have 10 people in it, 10 seniors in it. Now, for me, that's not big enough. I want luxury. I want more space. So our rule of thumb at the REL Academy is 300 square feet of living space per resident. Now, that's not their bedroom size. That's just 3,000 square foot house. I know I could reconfigure the space to have 10 or 12 residents in there. My homes are 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 square feet. So bigger is better within reason. More bathrooms is better within reason. You need at least 2 bathrooms for those 10 people. But if you had 10 bathrooms, that would be better. When I say better, we can charge more. because you can charge whatever you want. We focus on private pay, not Medicare and Medicaid. So a private room is going to be a higher amount than a shared room. A private bath in a private room is even higher. The master bedroom even higher. So the ultimate would be a well-located area based on the demographics. We have very specific metrics for that. The bigger, the better. Single level is better than two-story. More bedrooms, but bathrooms. It's more expensive to add a bathroom than it is to add a bedroom or convert space into. So those are some of the issues that we look at, and the location is really at the top of the list.
Is it typically better now that you've done both? You've done existing conversions and also new builds. I mean, what have you found to be the faster path to success with this model? Is it just build new from the ground up? That way you can design every element as you want it versus having to make conversions and exceptions with an older, maybe a less desirable floor plan?
I think ultimately, especially with the way building costs are today, the idea of buying a property and renovating it, it depends on the renovation. Because we've had some students take homes that cost them $500,000 and they did a $500,000 remodel. So now it's $1 million in. Well, what could you have bought for $1 million? Was it a nicer location, better area, et cetera, with less renovation required? So we do have a lot of students that are doing brand new build. And I think a lot of times people shy away from that because it's new for them. They haven't done it. But interestingly enough, a lot of the people that are attracted to what we're doing are either real estate investors and or contractors. So it's second nature to them, or they're on the healthcare side or the caring side. So that's the part they like. And when they partner together, that's really a great combination. But boy, we have as many new builds or total remodels going on as we do just conversions.
Talk to me about the neighborhood. Right? We're talking about neighborhood settings here. So you've got neighbors on probably the left side, right side, maybe across the street, what have you. Are there any restrictions, just generally speaking, that would prohibit one, a normal residential home being converted into one of these residential senior care facilities?
Zoning, rules, regulations, all of that is very local. So big picture, there's the Federal Fair Housing Act. You cannot discriminate against the elderly or the disabled. Somebody who needs assisted living who's elderly is considered disabled. So that's two categories out of many within that. So we know the rules better than most HOAs, most homeowners, most neighborhoods. So I think most times when you walk into a neighborhood, if there is an HOA, a homeowners association, they more than likely have CC&Rs, covenants, codes, and restrictions. More than likely in the CC&Rs is going to say two things. One, you can't operate a business out of a home. And it also might have some restriction on the number of people that can live in a home. Now, both of those things right there are totally illegal when we talk about the Federal Fair Housing Act. So here's the first thing. We're not operating a business. It's a group home. So when a neighbor may say, well, I don't want you to do that, it's a business. Well, it's a group home, but you're charging them money. Well, if we did it for free and didn't charge them a dime, would you be okay with it then? Well, no. Okay, so you're just discriminating against the elderly and disabled. So we can go down that path, but we actually created a national association for all the operators throughout the country. We've got over 40,000 members right now. In addition to that, there's a team of attorneys that specialize in building and zoning, and they know how to talk the talk, and they can go through the process. I think one of the challenges most people have in real estate entrepreneurs or anything in business, they try to change the law versus just get the exception to be able to do your thing. So reasonable accommodation, those are the legal terms that they would use to say, just let me have my care home. You don't need to change the rule that you have for everybody, even though it's discriminatory, even though you would lose in a lawsuit, just let me do it. That gives them the freedom to be able to say, okay, you can do it, but we're not going to let other people do it. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, exactly. Let's walk through a typical transaction, and you can choose whether it's a remodel or ground up build. But in any event, I want to get an idea, high level picture of total cost going in. What size is the facility or the home? I know you don't like the word facility, so I'll try to stop. I'll try to omit that from my vocabulary because that's very institutional like, and that's not what you do. And so, total cost of the project, size of the project, lease up time frame, expense ratio, the average pricing for each of the private units, what have you, how many,
right.
care individuals do you need on site there? All this stuff, right? All the details, nitty gritty, please.
This is great. I could go on for 3 days, but I'm going to do it in 3 minutes or less. So here we go. Number one, we know that right now throughout the U.S., the national home price is $340,000. That's the national. But in some places, it's 180, and some it's 1.3 million. So very local. But let's just say Arizona, where I currently am, and let's just say the average home here is $400,000 to pick a number. All right, we want a bigger than average home because it's probably going to be 3,000 square feet or higher. So it might be $500,000 or $600,000 for that home in the right location. The next thing is renovation. Depends on what it needs. There's some homes I walk into and it's like it was designed for seniors. Others I walk in and say, I may as well knock it down and rebuild. There's so much it needs. So let's just say it needs $150,000 in renovations. And that could be things like fire suppression, sprinklers potentially, smoke detectors, widened doors, smooth floors, take out bathtubs, put in roll-in, walk-in showers. So let's just say 150. So we're at 5 and 150, 650. Then one of the biggest expenses that people forget when they're entrepreneurs, they just assume they're making profit day one. No, you need business startup costs. We call it soft costs or that type of thing. So let's just throw another $100 into it, $100,000. So we're at $750,000. Wow, Gene, that's a lot. All right. Right now in America, the average for an assisted living individual in a private room is $4,300 per person per month. So just take average. That $4,300 a month, let's say there's 10 residents in that 3,000 square foot home, is $43,000 a month in gross income. The expenses on that, including the real estate, the insurance, and most importantly, the caregivers and the managers, because I'm not going to do it. We hire people to do it. That's about 70 to 80% of that gross income. So what I can make at the end of that, after everything is paid for, is 20 to 30% of that gross number. So that might be $8,000 to $15,000, depending on the details, per month for that single family home.
Okay, fantastic. What type of debt's available? Using that example of buying an existing home and then doing the renovation, doing the conversion to a senior residential senior facility or home. I'm sorry, God, I keep using that word. I promised you.
Oh, it's okay.
But what type of debt is available? Can one go get a investment loan for a single family residence and then do the conversion? Is it commercial? What's that look like?
So the house itself is a residential home. So when you go to eBay, they're going to say, do you live there or is it non-owner occupied? So you're going to be on the non-owner occupied. I don't want you living there. Yep. So it's basically a 20% equity or down payment. That's going to be the requirement there. So $500, you need $100,000 down payment right there for a normal bank loan. The renovation, it depends on that bank. What will they do? The blue sky costs, typically they're not going to finance it. Let's step it up. Let's say it's SBA, Small Business Administration. They love what we do. They're very, very supportive. They know it's needed. They'll finance up to 90% of the purchase price, up to 80% of the renovation or additions that happen, and 75% of the business startup. So the overall, you might need 20% down on that 750. But there's actually 7 different ways to fund this. So we do a lot of syndication and raising of capital. We helped somebody raise $1.6 million. We did it within less than 2 weeks, right at Christmas time, to fund their project entirely. But syndication, private lending, all kinds of access to different funds that are out there between self-directed IRAs, et cetera. So there's lots of ways that it can be funded. One of the resources, by the way, that I found and I think is really helpful, I'll give it to you, you can pass it to the listeners, is banklocal.info. So it's a website that banklocal.info. We've got all the state, local credit unions, et cetera, because they're going to be more apt to do business with a local business than they will Bank of America, Wells Fargo. If you don't fit in their box, you're out the door. So banklocal.info, and look under the category of their small business. Are they outstanding? Those are the ones we want.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And it kind of lends me to my next question. For folks that are jumping into this space, wanting to do their first home, do you recommend that they do it in their local marketplace or within close proximity of their local marketplace? Or is this something that one, should basically seek out the best market versus trying to do it close to home?
Boy, man, you're asking really good questions. So I appreciate that. Well, first of all, I always say live where you want to live, but invest where the numbers make sense. Mm-hmm. So it depends on where you live. San Jose right now is out of whack. I mean, it's crazy. So the point is, Expensive markets may not make any sense at all. You might have to move out 5-10 minutes. But let's think bigger. 30% of the people who came to our national convention last year, we polled them, own and operate homes out of state. So they're not nearby. It's not next door. It's not an hour away. It's out of state, 30%. So again, where it makes sense to you might be in a completely different state. We have a lot of Californians who invest in Arizona, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Part of this is the conversation. Do you want to be hands-on or hands-off? I want to be hands-off. I don't want to go there. I don't want to be there. I don't want to be hands-on at all. I want to be hands-off. If I live right next door, I'm going to be really tempted to walk next door and check the temperature of the water and everything else. So I don't want to be there. So at the beginning, when you're first getting started, I would say it probably makes more sense to do it close to you if you can. If that doesn't work, the numbers don't work, someplace you really want to go visit. So it might be, I want to go to Honolulu. Great. Let's check that out. So someplace you want to visit. And if not, maybe it's not where you want to live or visit, but it's close by and it makes sense. The numbers, that would be your third choice. The next thing is hands-on or hands-off. I highly encourage anybody who's listening, thinking about getting in this, don't be the manager, don't be the caregiver, don't be the cook, the baker, the candlestick maker, right? You do your part. You own the real estate, you operate the business. The people all the time, Kevin, it's so funny. They say, well, what if a caregiver calls off? What do you do? It's like, I don't know. That's the manager's job. What do you think? The owner of the hotel is checking if the maid didn't clean the room, they're going to come in and clean it at midnight? No, the manager, they're either going to find somebody or they're going to do it themselves. Same thing with any business. So it depends on how you want to operate your life, how much control you want to have.
So the staffing, just to dig in there a little bit, you mentioned the caretaker and the manager. Even if one would have just one home, so your average 3,000 to 5,000 square foot home, would that one home have both a caretaker and a manager specific to that individual home?
You need 24-hour care. So the caregivers are there 24/7, probably shift work. That's how we do it. Mm-hmm. The manager could be a caregiver who's also acting as the house manager. Okay. You don't need a separate manager to oversee, and it's not a full-time job for a manager to manage one home. That manager could oversee 3-4 homes. So they can oversee 3 or 4 homes. And if you have what we call a 3-pack, 3 of these homes within 30 minutes of each other, one manager can oversee, the caregivers can be shared throughout the homes. The economies of scale of products and services you get are shared as well. That's a really good business model.
Every business has its own unique nuances. I mean, we're in the mobile home park space. I could speak to probably just right off the cuff, probably 5 that are just unique to mobile home parks that create their own, again, unique headaches. Senior care, senior living, the type of business that you're in today, these residential senior homes. What are some of those unique nuances that are specific to your niche?
It's so funny that you say that, because I think if I were to ask you the same question, what's your biggest challenge? The answer would be people, right? It's not the trailers or the park or this, right. It's the humans that are involved. So for us, the challenges are the residents, their family, the managers, the caregivers. It's always the humans. So let me just get specific. People all the time ask, how do you find great caregivers? When unemployment was 3.5%, it was different than when it was 10%, right? Now we're back down to 7% or less. But the reality is it didn't matter whether it was 3% or 13%. I'm always looking for good people. Mm-hmm. When it comes to the caregivers, that same person is going to be a caregiver, is not a barista. They're not a waitress. They're not working they are not. They love seniors, and this is their job. None of them lost a job during this whole time. They've been working overtime. Business still goes on. We are one of the absolute only businesses that had zero negative effect from a financial standpoint. People need to take care of mom. They're going to pay for it. It's private pay we focus on. If it were government pay, the government just prints more money. It wouldn't matter, but they don't print enough for us. So the point is, we're doing just fine business-wise. And even the caregivers, when somebody says they've had any kind of business and their challenge is always the employees, well, I got a clue for you. It's not the employees, it's you. You got to be an employer of choice. They're going to work for somebody. What they're saying is, I don't want to work for you for some reason. So don't look at them, look at you. What are you doing that could make you the employer of choice? We have caregivers calling us saying, can I work for you? And some of them have been with us for years and years and years.
No, that's a very valid point. What does the average caregiver make? And I know it's market specific, but what is the average wage of a caregiver?
they're some of the most important people in the house, and they get paid basically minimum wage plus a couple of dollars.
Okay.
So let's just say minimum wage for $10 in your area, 10 to 13 might be the range.
Mm-hmm.
If it's $12, might be 12 to 15, but they're not highly paid. The chef that we have, if we have a nicer home, we hire a chef, they may get paid more than the caregiver.
Mm-hmm.
And I think personally, I'd rather be cooking food, although you wouldn't want to eat my food. I'd rather be cooking the food than being the caregiver. I just was never designed to be a caregiver. It's a tough job, but they love what they do. But minimum wage plus a couple of dollars.
And what's that training look like? What do they typically go through? And again, I'm assuming there's probably state specifics and then on a federal level as well. But
it truly is state specific. Yeah, like in the state of Florida, for instance, there's a training you take called the CORE training, CORE. It's a 24-hour course. Qualifications to be a manager, 21 years old, a GED, and fog a mirror, right? Pretty much. To be a caregiver in Florida, I believe it's currently 12 hours of training within the first 30 days. That's like fog a mirror and you're a caregiver. In Arizona, it's different. To be a caregiver, 60 plus hours, used to be over 100 hours of training just for a caregiver, TB test, background check, fingerprint card. To become a manager, another 40 hours of training. And by the way, everybody is tested and so on. 2 years of experience with being a caregiver first, then training to be a manager second, 2 years of experience before you can be a manager. Now, having said all that, it is state specific, and it really doesn't matter what it is in your area because you're not going to be the manager. You're not going to be the caregiver. Right. We're going to hire those people that are. But once they come into our system, our family, meaning within these homes, our manager is going to train them the way we want things done. Not just the state's bare minimum requirements, but we're better than the others, and that's part of what we do. We want to be better, provide better care, better environment for those seniors and their families.
Mm-hmm. So outside of the senior homes, you've also have a few other initiatives that we talked about a little bit before we started recording here. One being group housing homes, and also you have a new project called Prefer Real Estate Provider. So why don't you speak to both of those and exactly what they are and what you have going on in those spaces?
Yeah, I'll talk about the shared housing first. For years, Kevin, we've had people come to us and say, hey, I love what you do, but can we use this home for my adult kid with autism or somebody who's on the spectrum? Because they're going to outlive me by 20 or 30 years and I need a place for them. Or how about doing student housing or shared housing for somebody with whether it be addictions or justice or anything else? Group homes themselves, they kind of have a bad connotation in a lot of markets and they've earned it. So we've raised the bar. These homes themselves, we have an academy that trains people, the Shared Housing Academy, how to do these group homes qualified for all kinds of state, federal, and state money. These homes themselves, if it's a certified recovery home, the whole idea of rent moratoriums or you can't evict somebody, all that's out the window. It doesn't apply to us. So that's a big, huge win. Plus, with these kind of homes, you don't have to accept anybody. I remember when I had a lot of rental homes and somebody would come and I knew in my gut, these people are going to be bad, right? They're going to be out of here in 4 months and taking my kitchen with them. But I couldn't say no, or I could be accused of doing something wrong, right? They got the money, filled in the contract, they applied. Now, whether it's the seniors or the shared housing, we can say no. So the shared housing really is more of a real estate opportunity. I know you had an experience with it, but it sounds like you probably did it without a lot of training, without a lot of knowledge, and it was kind of figure it out as you go. And if it is, there's a lot of things you can learn from other people's mistakes. I'd much rather learn from yours than mine. So the Shared Housing Academy, we brought in some real pros. They've trained hundreds and hundreds of people around the country. They do it themselves, and you can cash flow more expensive properties in expensive markets that you couldn't normally cash flow. In addition to that, we have the other program that I mentioned, which is you mentioned, the Preferred Housing Provider. Because I realize there's a lot of people who are listening right now who are saying, I just want to own the real estate. I don't care who's in it, but I don't want to be in the business. I just want to own the real estate and lease it to an operator. Well, we call that a preferred real estate provider, where we vetted them. They know what we do. They know what we need. And then what we do is we can connect them with people who are saying, I'm willing to lease the house for maybe twice the market rent with a 5-year long-term lease. Give me an option to buy, and we'll take care of the maintenance as well. So that's kind of the holy grail of rental properties, when you have somebody paying twice the rent, long-term lease, and no maintenance, that's that preferred real estate provider where somebody can pick and choose who they work with. But we have students that are creating these businesses and they need the real estate. They're not necessarily real estate savvy, but if somebody is, that's a great match for them.
Give me an example on the real estate side. Using that example, I mean, what type of return might the investor, the real estate investor that owns the actual physical real estate, what might they expect from that type of scenario?
Yep. I think a lot of times people go into a home with one of two things. I'm either going to fix it and flip it or I'm going to rent it. And if it's fix and flip, it almost doesn't matter as long as you can sell it for more than. But when it's the rent, the rent has to exceed the expenses on it. So a lot of homes today, the average rent in America is currently $1,865 a month. The average home costs $340,000. Those numbers don't work. There's not enough money to pay for the debt service, principal, interest, repairs, etc. We'll break even, maybe a little positive or minus. But if you took that same home, average, and we were now getting, instead of less than $2,000, maybe we're getting $6,000 or $8,000 a month because we're renting it out by two people in a room, and the state is reimbursing $800 per person, and you have 8 or 10 of those people. All of a sudden, we're making $8,000 a month. Yep, you're going to pay for the utilities and you're going to pay for some upkeep, call $1,000 for that. But now you got $7,000 versus $2,000. Now you've got serious positive cash flow from that single family home.
Mm-hmm. Gene, everyone always talks about all the deals that went well, the ones they made the most money on, the highest returns, right? But very few people ever talk about that, the demon, the one that just, they lost money on. Maybe it was a failed partnership. They got more gray hairs. They went bald completely, whatever. And then normally, if you've been an investor for a long period of time, you probably have a few of those, right? You should, if you're actually doing deals, and you probably have a few of those. Maybe not they necessarily lost money on, but just they were way more stressful by like a 10x than the other typical deals or transactions you might have been involved in. So the one that comes to mind, what is it? What happened? What was the deal? What went wrong? And then ultimately, what would you have done differently the second time around?
I'm a fast learner, so I'm going to say it was a long time ago. It was a 4-unit property in Waterford, New York. So it was a 4-unit property. It actually had 3 levels to it. There was 2 apartments on the first level, 1 on the second, and then 1 on the third level. So what went wrong was, the cash flow was decent. It wasn't amazing. It was reasonable. But the building had so many issues with it that I just failed to recognize and didn't account for. So I remember the brick fascia at one point was just bulging out. And it's like, this whole thing is going to collapse. And I just hope it doesn't fall on somebody. The third level really was an illegal apartment with like a 6-foot ceiling. It kind of tapered down to 6 feet.
My gosh.
And it was like that. And I'm like, what if there's a fire? There's no fire escape on this thing. So it was at the point where, and then it was also in an area, I said Waterford, so water being the key word there, where there is flooding on occasion. It's like between the occasional flooding, between the bowed out brick and fascia on it, between no fire escape in an illegal apartment, I think I want to sell this one. So I remember selling it for just right about what I paid for it. But the angst that it gave me, and just like you said, 10 times the others, the angst that it gave me was just crushing. So I had it for a couple of years, and I was so thankful to get out. It was like a home run, just getting out at break even.
Gene, what one final gold nugget of advice or wisdom? You shared a lot already, but what one final gold nugget of advice or wisdom would you leave with our listeners here today that might inspire and motivate them as they progress in their own real estate investing career or senior housing career, what have you? Especially given our current times we find ourselves in. Again, this is going to be released probably a couple of months after our recording here, but in any event, it's going to be real today. And so, what advice would you give those that are just jumping in?
Man, I wish I had an hour, a cigar, and a glass of wine because there's so many things I'd love to share. But the reality is, there is a lot going on, you guys, and I'm not saying be just, close your eyes and put on the pink sunglasses here, but the rose-colored glasses. The reality is, no matter what's going on, pay attention to what's important. Because the older I get, I just celebrated my 60th birthday. I made it, woo, but it's all of a sudden, it's like, wow. Not all of a sudden. I knew my boxes were being checked. Probably not going to live to be 100, hopefully 80 or something. We'll find out. But the point is, there's not that many boxes left. So the people in your life, your spouse, your kids, your friends, those relationships, that stuff is much more important than any business, real estate, money, any of that. There's a song, Cats in the Cradle. Don't know if you've heard it, But if you have, it sticks in your memory and will sear it like a brand from Ponderosa. That's an old TV show when I grew up. So the point is, take the time, spend the time, invest the time. Now, I'm also fortunate. I'm working with my kids right now, so I literally get to see them every single day, and it's awesome. But if I didn't, if they were living out of town, it might be a couple times a year, maybe once a month. I mean, now I'm on either a meeting with them on Zoom or face-to-face in person, and it's wonderful. So figure out a way to spend time with your kids, and maybe it's bringing them into the business.
I love that. And my kids are still too young to, figure out exactly which path they're going to take in life. They're 4 and 7, so we've got some years to go. But I really hope that becomes the case, because I feel you. I'm all about family. I mean, the more time I could spend with the kids and the wife and make memories. I mean, here's the thing, Gene. I mean, we're not promised tomorrow. You mentioned, I don't know if I'm going to live to 100. I mean, gosh, for all we know, again, not to sound morbid, but we don't know if we're going to live till tomorrow. We just don't know those things. And so you got to hustle, you got to grind, you got to make your way and do well, but ultimately don't lose focus on family and friends and really creating those special memories. I find myself kind of scrolling through Facebook like some of us do. I mean, I try to limit that to literally only a few minutes a day, but in any event, I see a lot of folks really bragging about the hustle, the 80 hours a week. And I know you got to do that for a period of time, but there never should be a point in time where you brag more about that than you do about making memories with your friends, with your family, with your wife, with your kids, what have you. I mean, it needs to be evenly balanced. Otherwise, your life would just fall out this way. And you're going to be, what are we going to realize? Fast forward 10, 15, 20 years, you're going to look back and be like, what the hell just happened there? I literally don't, all I remember is working like a slave, and I might have a lot to show for material items, but where'd all the positive memories go that I should have created or would have created or could have created, right? And so anyway, I really put a strong emphasis on that. I'm glad you do as well. That sounds awesome. Glad to hear that your kids are working with you. That's really cool. I look forward to the day when that could be on my side.
Love it.
Gene, for folks that want to learn more about you, your business, what you guys have to offer, I know you have many different training programs, what have you. Where is the best place to find you?
I'm going to give you 2 websites. First one, real simple, RAL 101, residential assisted living. So RAL101.com. If you want to learn more about residential assisted living, you can download a free book, watch some webinars, or give us a call. The other one is sharedhousingacademy.com. So the sharedhousingacademy.com. We are so excited about the opportunities there. So check that out. And if there's anything I can do to help, just let me know.
Awesome. Gene, so good catching up again, my friend. I'm wishing you all the best in 2021. Look forward to having you on again.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Alrighty, guys, that's all we have for this week's show. So until we meet again next week, this is your host, Kevin Bupp, wishing you huge success. Take care.
Congratulations! Now you've got more of the best tricks of the trade in building massive amounts of passive income from real estate. For more amazing resources, visit realestateinvestingforcashflow.com. And we'll see you next Monday morning.